there has been this race developing and building bigger and better models. So how do you strike a balance between quality versus quantity when training models like Jurassic?
The logical step to first size up, train these large models as a foundational layer.
LLM market headed for a winner-take-all scenario. Is there room for everyone to grow?
It's not going to be a winner-take-all. Every enterprise customers we've been interacting, we're not going to be dependent on a single vendor. We're going to take a multi-vendor approach.
What is the key differentiator between AI21 and the other foundation model builders and providers? Do you support private deployments like in a VPC or on-prem?
Absolutely. We have customers using our models in very sensitive environments, and of course, security is.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to The Encounter. I am Johnny, your host. Today, I'm pleased to invite Ori Goshen, co-CEO of AI21, the company that built some of the popular LLMs like Jurassic and tools like WordTune, which I'm a big fan of. So, Ori, welcome to Johnny.tv. I'm really excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So to kick off this discussion, Ori, I want to ask you something very obvious. So in the market, today we have not so many, but a handful of commercial LLM providers. So when it comes to Jurassic 2 from AI21 and some of the other models that you have, how do you differentiate? What is the key differentiator between AI21 and the other foundation model builders and providers?
The general purpose model we have in the market is called Jurassic 2. Is one of the leading ones, and it's an instruction following, chat following model basically. And it really excels in tasks like summarization and question answering. What we offer, which is kind of unique in the market, is we distill these large models into a smaller versions. We call them SLMs, small language models, that are specialized for particular tasks. So for example, we have models that are great at summarizing financial reports, or models that are really good at generating product descriptions in the retail industry. In general, our philosophy is that you have these general purpose models. They're great for consumer interaction. But when you think about the enterprise, typical enterprise is trying to solve particular tasks. So there's no point of basically using these huge hammer, these very general and gigantic models to solve these particular business problems. A better fit is smaller and specialized models. And these specialized model by design, they're more accurate because they're guided to solve these particular tasks. But there are also other benefits. They're cheaper to serve. They're much faster in terms of latency and the throughput that you can get. And more interestingly, I think these are actually closer to a solution, because if you think a general purpose model, you need to do a lot of work to get it into a working product. Once you have a specialized model, it's much closer to a product that needs to be deployed in production. So that's generally our philosophy. And in addition to our foundation models, the Jurassic 2 foundation models, and of course there'll be many versions in the future. In addition to that, we are doing these highly specialized and small models that we deploy in the enterprise.
So do you support private deployments like in a VPC or on-prem?
Absolutely. We're cloud only, and we have customers using our models in very sensitive environments. And of course, security is one of the top concerns and considerations in generative AI. And so we allow virtual private cloud deployments. Um, we are building these packaged solutions, so be very easy for a customer to deploy our systems within its own cloud infrastructure. We also partner here, so we work with very closely with Google Cloud and AWS, and of course these partners have the infrastructure to provide these types of deployments inside VPC, and VPC deployment is very, very popular. Again, especially if we're thinking about regulated industries or anywhere where there's very sensitive information. That's probably the preferred deployment method.
Perfect. So I want to ask you something that I always wanted to ask a company, a CEO of an LLM company. So there has been this race of developing and building bigger and better models, right? There has been a race so far. Some disclose, some don't even disclose, but they claim to be like trillion parameters and billion parameters. So how do you strike a balance between quantity and quality of data sets when training LLMs? There is a discussion currently going on, particularly with Microsoft betting on Phi 2, which is trained on textbooks is all you need philosophy. The more qualitative data sets, and even some talk about Mistral 7B being more effective. So how do you strike a balance between quality versus quantity when training models like Jurassic?
Right. I think the jury is still out. I mean, there is room for these very large models. I mean, especially for, of course, research. I think it's a logical step to first size up and train these large models as a foundational layer, and then you can distill them into smaller versions, and either specialize them by task or by domain, um, or by different dimensions. But I think the kind of first step of trying to scale up in terms of the model size, but also the amount of data that is being used to train the model is actually a critical step, because then you can see how far you can push these models, like in terms of performance on various tasks. And also, I think there are some, um, again, if you think about consumer offering, when there is a general purpose assistant, then it also makes, in a way, it makes sense to build a model that carries a lot of knowledge in various domains and fields and so forth. Um, but I think now the market is basically diverging. You'll have these set of large language models, but you have a lot of the innovation will be actually in these smaller and more specialized models. And I think the next step would be going from just models to AI systems that encapsulate those models. So and kind of orchestrate and maybe use a portfolio of models rather than a single model. I think that's generally the direction we're seeing. I mean, just to name a few names, you can think of the long chains and the llama indexes of the world as sort of an orchestration layer. But I think we'll see a lot of innovation around that part as well, and a more deeply integrated approach with the model's capabilities. Um, and um, and so the innovation is definitely not going to be only around scaling up things. It will continue. I think there's a lot of room for and a lot of benefits from scaling up these models, but there will be other areas of innovation, like specializing the models and also building these AI systems, these orchestration layers that can actually use these models and gain more reliability and get better performance and cost and cost structures.
Got it. Got it. So, Ori, AI21 is one of the first model providers to talk about task-specific models, right? I found that very unique on your website and your offering. So, how are they different from fine-tuned models or typical LLMs that are available in the market?
So that's a great question. So first of all, by default, these are smaller models and kind of distilled models from a general purpose foundation model. And second, at the heart, it's the fine tuning is kind of a very I would say ambiguous term, because there's a lot of techniques to customize these models and to specialize these models. And we've been around I think we were one of the, as you mentioned, early players in the game. So we have a lot of experience in specializing and deploying these models in production. And we use that knowledge to create, you can think of it as a factory that helps us to specialize these models using several techniques towards specific tasks and domains. And I think if you think about a typical enterprise, it would actually it has access to models. Some of them are obviously open source models, so it has access to models. I don't think that's the problem, but it's still lacking the access or even capability of having the expertise in place to fine-tune the models and actually specialize them in a robust way towards the task that they're trying to achieve. But moreover, sometimes they don't even actually have the data. Sometimes an enterprise really care about a task, a specific task, but don't have really the data. I mean, I'm not just speaking about cleaning the data. I mean, access to enough data that would require to build a specialized model. So what we're doing here is we're saving a lot of the legwork. We're basically curating data and using many techniques, these specialization, these fine-tuning techniques, to get into an optimal model that is performant on the specific task. And what we typically do, we don't satisfy just with the model. We build a system around it that may have other elements, like all the retrieval mechanisms to get the relevant information, or the verification system to make sure that the model is generating relevant information. So we're providing this kind of out of the box. So as an enterprise customer, instead of carrying or start building the whole pipeline, you can basically take our own solutions that are really optimized, solving different tasks. So I think that's what distinguishes between broadly just a fine-tuning technique versus building specialized AI systems that are really good at solving particular tasks.
So what exactly is a task? Is it rephrasing, summarization, question answering? Are those the tasks that you are talking about?
Right. I think these are great examples. I think usually, more useful. A useful way to think about it is a combination of a task and domain, right? So you can have a summarization module that is really good at summarizing 10Ks, or a summarization module that is really good at summarizing podcasts, right? All of these have different kind of input-output characteristics. And so when you build a model, you also give it a little bit of flexibility, because you don't want to be too strict. But still, it's much, much narrow than the general purpose model that can, for example, write you a blog post or your next poem. I think that's at the heart, the idea is that you're really guiding and focusing these models around particular tasks.
Awesome. So is it safe to assume WordTune is a wrapper on top of a bunch of task-specific models? Because I've been using WordTune even before ChatGPT and all these copilots became popular. I've been a
Right.
long-standing subscriber. So is that assumption right?
Yeah, basically, Wordtune is powered by our own proprietary task-specific models. That's correct.
Awesome. So another question that I wanted to ask you, Ori, is how do you ensure there is a human in the loop when you are pre-training LLMs? I know there is RLHF and well-defined process, but uh, that's still a black box. No one understands where exactly the human steps in and streamlines the whole training process.
Right. So, of course, the human piece is very important when you're training these large models and you're aligning them with instruction following or multi-turn capabilities. You need human to basically annotate and label the data. I think it's pretty much a public knowledge. There are essentially two phases. There's the supervised fine tuning where you take very high scale amount of labeled data and which is high quality, and you kind of fine tune the model with that part. And then you have the RLHF with preferences of, so you basically use the model's outputs. You create diverse set of outputs from the model, and then you let people rank how better these like how these outputs compare to each other. And then you have another iteration of training where you kind of incorporating that signal as well into the model. That's kind of very simplistically the whole human in the loop and fine tuning cycle. But God is in the details. There's so many techniques, and the quality of data is so critical. And the diversity of data and the type of data that you're using for these fine tuning techniques is critical for the model quality. I hope it kind of gives a sense for
It
what
does.
this
It does.
process looks like.
Cool. So I'm actually a developer at heart, and when I looked at AI21 website, I was fascinated by the concept of studio, uh, because you are actually competing with other hyperscalers who are also providing a no code or an API endpoint experience. So my question is, with Jurassic LLMs available in popular hyperscalers like in Amazon Bedrock and Google Vertex AI model catalog, and this is where at least half of the enterprise data resides. So why should someone use AI21 Studio?
Right. I think there's I'm actually pretty surprised by people that really care about working with an independent software provider. So in many, and we have a lot of good stuff. We're baking into AI20 Studio that creates these very pleasant experiences for developers. So I think people generally like it. We are kind of, for example, we're baking in some automatic evaluation features to help um, people to deploy the models that they customize, um, and generally test the models against various different tasks. But I think our strategy, we're really big believers in multi-cloud. This is where the world is heading. A lot of the enterprises are working with multiple cloud providers. So we want to be, we are deeply integrated currently with the Google and AWS, and in the future with probably with other cloud services, but not just cloud services. We intend also to expand um, to additional platforms. We've announced earlier this year our partnership with Snowflake, and we'll have our models available through Snowpark. Um, so we really believe that the way to go is to be where the customers are, interested and where the data reside. But there are many cases where companies are, just interested in an independent SaaS layer that and definitely if there's no sensitive data involved, they can more easily and in a frictionless way interact with the SaaS platform.
Awesome. I have a follow-up question. So you talk about smaller models and task-specific models. When can we see these models getting deployed on edge devices like Jetson Orin or Jetson Xavier kind of devices? When will LLMs break out of these cloud boundaries and get to the edge?
Right. I think it's a great question. I think there's still a way to get there. I actually think there are probably more simplistic tasks. You can actually create a model that in a size that is now feasible to run on an edge device. But of course, as we see these models and their capabilities, we as an industry, we always strive to get the most performant area, so we don't satisfy for the more local and simple tasks, so to speak. I don't have I'm always trying to be very careful with my predictions, but I think we'll start seeing these smaller models better and better at some tasks. But I think longer term, probably what will happen is we'll have this hybrid model where some of the computation is being done locally on the edge, but probably more complicated tasks are going to be done on the cloud. That's my personal view of how this is going to evolve, but the jury is still out, of course.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Ori, we are almost at the end of this discussion, and the last question that I want to ask you is the LLM market headed for a winner-take-all scenario, or is there room for everyone to grow?
Again, I'm careful, but I'll be more opinionated on this. I think there's definitely it's not going to be a winner-take-all, and what makes me so confident about it is just relentlessly speaking with customers and the way they think about the world, and it's everywhere. Every enterprise customers we've been interacting with is saying like, "Hey, we're not going to be dependent on a single vendor. We're going to take a multi-vendor approach," and we probably their assumption is that there are going to be different models that are good for different types of purposes, and I think it's actually right. And I think it's a smart move, and it's more distributed. Like even as an enterprise, you're taking the build approach and you're trying to build all the use cases by yourself. It's probably wiser to use different models and kind of give that optionality for your developers team, because you may get different benefits from the other. It's also a very dynamic market, so every few weeks there's a new model coming out. So I think it's the right strategy, and it's very much kind of showing that the path we're heading is probably to a more distributed area versus a centralized one. But we'll see. I think we all need to be very modest here. This is early days for the industry, right?
Absolutely. Amazing. It's been a very, very interesting discussion. I'm sure my community gets a lot of value out of this. So thank you so much, Ori, for joining, and we'll do a follow-up soon. I'm going to spend some more time with your AI21 studio, and I'll come back to you in a few months for a follow-up discussion. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.